So you're doing webinars or you're thinking about starting to do webinars and you're wondering pre-recorded automated webinars or live webinars, which is the way to go? Well, today on the Advisor's Digital Toolbox on Horse's Mouth Live, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each approach and get into what works best for you. Let's get into it. Welcome, everybody. I am Doug Pierce, joined by Devin Kropp. Devin, how are you doing today?
Good. Hi, everyone.
You decided to join me today. You left me hanging last
Yeah,
week.
I'm back.
It's okay. I forgive you. You might have been hosting a workshop, but it's okay. So let's get right into things, and define our terms. Take a step back a little bit, because I think most people know what we're talking about when we say a live webinar. You're hopping on Zoom or some other webinar platform. You're giving your presentation. You're sharing your screen, you're sharing your slides, you're interacting with the chat, taking questions. We all pretty much know what that is, but the automated approach is people might not be as familiar with that. So when we say an automated webinar, what we mean is you're taking a pre-recorded video and you are putting it into this automated webinar solution. We'll get into kind of the players in the space a little bit later, and then it's you set up your registration page and some other options, and then your attendees are registering for the webinar and attending the webinar and watching that pre-recorded video without you being there. That's the main thing with an automated webinar is you're not there. Did I cover that, Devin? You have anything else to add?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Okay. So now I think that when most people and most advisors, time strapped as they are, hear about the automated webinar solution, they're like, "Ooh, I want that." But I also think that it can be a little bit of a security blanket where, I can pre-record it and I don't have to worry about messing up live. That sounds good too. Right? So let's get into kind of a list of the advantages first. And let's go ahead and start with automated webinars. Already covered it, a couple of them anyway. Pre-recorded, it just runs on autopilot. That sounds great. And you can, get it right. You can edit the video before you upload it. And of course, you don't have to be there. I think people like to think they'll be on the beach sipping Mai Tais when their webinars are rolling, bringing in new prospects into the pipeline, right? So that's a big advantage to automated webinars. And Devin, I think you can speak about the scalability of automated webinars when you tie it in to something like, Facebook ads or other times of advertising, where because you can set up these automated webinars to run literally every 15 minutes, right? You can, in theory, constantly be pushing people to register for them, to be watching them, and then for getting your offer at the end, whether that's a one-on-one consultation appointment, whatever, or to get them to download some other resource or something like that. So you want to talk a little bit about the power of that, because that is definitely one of the big advantages, I think, to automated webinars.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Because when you think about marketing for a single webinar event, you're spending time and money into your marketing for, a 1 hour presentation. And if you are marketing that event to, thousands of people, but someone already has something going on at that one time you're offering it, they're not going to probably sign up for the event. And you're spending a lot of money for a one-time thing. Of course, even if you're doing a live event, you can do a recording and share that afterwards. But sometimes people really want to be there for the live thing. They don't want to miss out on an opportunity to ask questions, or they want to be there. So a definite advantage of the automated solution is that you can be running your marketing, whether it's Facebook advertisement or even an email campaign, you can be running that nonstop because the automated webinar, like Doug said, looks like it's live to the average person. So they'll see, you could say a Facebook ad, come to this webinar. You don't have to put, a time and date on it. They click on it and they have 3 different options to choose from. Maybe there's one in 15 minutes, which I think we've talked about this before on this program. The most interested someone is in your webinar is when they first find out about it. Like when they see that advertisement, they're like, oh yeah, I do want to know about Social Security. And if I can find out about it right now, that's great. So you can advertise an automated webinar 15 minutes from now, or you can say, oh, I'm also going to do one, on Friday at 3 p.m. and then Sunday morning at 10 a.m. or something like that. So it gives them the choice, but you could always be running that advertisement and those choices are always going to exist. So you're not just spending money for a one-time event, you're spending money for possibly, 20 different events a month, depending on, how you set up the automated process. So that is definitely a huge benefit of that, is that you can kind of set up your marketing and set it and forget it. And you don't have to go in and change dates and times and links and all of that.
Yeah, I like to think of automated webinars as like a killer lead magnet where you're pushing people to it, to sign up for my webinar or whatever you want to call it. Maybe we'll talk a little bit later about the word webinar and the baggage. Yeah. It means like, it's got that infomercial connotation to it. And a lot of people will call them something else, like a masterclass.
Yeah, that's like the buzzword right now, right?
But that's what my brain hears webinar when I hear somebody say masterclass at this point. It's that word is getting a little bit too overdone as well. But yeah, so scalability, that's what Devin was just talking about, where you can really build up your presence with automated webinars is huge. Now, Devin, you mentioned something that I was going to mention in disadvantages, where you mentioned that it looks live. And here's the thing. I think a discerning, viewer will be able to sniff out the fact that it is not live. But I ask myself, would I even care? Like, if I'm, clicking on to watch a, webinar, masterclass, or whatever that I'm interested in, and I'm like, oh, this was pre-recorded. Like, does that even matter to me? Like, I'm getting the training I wanted to get. Right? And like Devin said, when somebody finds out about the webinar and registers for it, that is the peak of their interest. And if you can if you can fulfill that instant gratification and get them watching it right now, not only are they gonna, watch it right now, but there's less room for all the other distraction that gets in the way between now and the air date of your webinar, to get in the way. As we all know, life being life, and the deluge of emails and just everything we're constantly getting, there's a lot that can kind of get in the way of your registrants attending your webinar.
Right.
So getting them right in, that's big. Now but by the way, that to me is a dead giveaway for the fact that it's automated. If I go to sign up and there's one starting in 15 minutes, I'm like, okay, it's like 5 a.m. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's one starting at 5:15 a.m. Yeah, right. But like I said, I don't really think it matters as much as you might think for it to be automated. Do you agree?
I do agree. And I think that in a way you can almost use it to your advantage to make that next step, because you can say like, oh, if you do have questions, schedule a 15-minute call with me. And if someone has sat through that automated webinar and does have a question, maybe they're more likely to, call you and ask that question and have a conversation with you. Where, in a live webinar, they can type it in the chat and they get their question answered, and maybe, that's as far as the conversation goes. So I think you can, advisors who, really grasp this concept can take it to the next level and use it as an advantage point if they have a strong follow-up in place. And I know, Doug, I think you can probably talk more to this, but there is also an ability in certain programs for the advisor to be in the chat and answering questions while it's being played. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is true. So it depends on the platform. And again, we'll talk about some specific platforms in a bit, but yeah, certain platforms will let you, not only can you be, on live answering questions that come in like in chat as your presentation is rolling, so to speak, but some platforms will even let you join in with your video live at the end for like a live Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think that that would be the best of both worlds, but in my mind, and why would you not just be doing it live if you're going to spend the time to be there answering chat questions and coming on for live Q&A at the end? Why not just do the whole presentation live? Because live brings a lot to the table, which we're going to get into in a minute. But I'm having a little problem bringing up the comments here, so I'm just gonna read them, Devin.
Okay.
For us here. So Andy is asking, so this is a big draw for me. The webinar is available when the prospect is ready. It is on their schedule instead of mine. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then Andy follows that up with, plus, as Jamin Garabedian mentioned, all questions come to him via email so that he can answer them in a fairly timely manner. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Andy, because that actually is a key thing where you've now moved, because when they input their questions in the automated webinar, you get an email. Now you're emailing them back, and you're starting this whole separate conversation. You're having an email dialogue going on. It's not just restrained to a chat box in a webinar. That's a really good point.
Yeah, it's so much easier to form that connection and again follow up with them and say, hey, I know you had a question on this. Why don't we schedule a time to chat about it? And that can, be your first meeting. That's a really, I think, in a way, an easier follow up than, just having them attend a live session and having no interaction with them whatsoever. So I think that is definitely an advantage. And I'm glad, Andy, that you brought that up, because it's true. You can form more of a connection, even though in a different way than it being live.
Yeah. Definitely. So Peter, we've got Peter on. Hi, Peter. So instead of having one held every 15 or 30 minutes, can't these pre-recorded webinars be viewed immediately on demand? Is it a hard start time or a gimmick so the attendee believes it's live? It is a gimmick. It is kind of a gimmick where, you have these set times where the webinar is going to, happen. And that is just a gimmick to make it feel like an event, not just a video. It's an event, right? It's just to give that feeling. And they can be viewed on demand. So EverWebinar, which is the platform I'm most familiar with, and is what Jamin, is that how you pronounce his name?
I think it's Jamin.
Jamin, thank you, Jamin. And that's what Jamin uses. And you can, in that platform, set it up so that one of the options for attending the webinar is to watch the replay from yesterday.
Right.
That is an option for you there, Peter. But yeah, it's mostly a gimmick. But like I said, I don't think people mind as much as you would think, knowing that it's automated. I really don't. But maybe that's just me. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, would you get annoyed if you signed up for a webinar and then you went to attend and you sniffed out that it was pre-recorded? I mean, would you be outraged, or would you be like, okay, I'm just going to get the information. It's pre-recorded. Right. Okay, well, whatever. But I did want to say one more thing about this whole making it look real, but it's not really real, or live, and it's not really live thing. And that is that it used to be with the automated webinar solutions that you could set it up so that when somebody goes to attend the webinar, it's already playing when they come to the page. I believe that Google and I think Apple with Safari they didn't like this autoplay feature, so they've kind of clamped it down. So a lot of the big players in the space now, when somebody goes to watch the webinar and they come to the webinar page where they're seeing the embedded, webinar player, they have to click a button to start the broadcast. Okay, so that's another a red flag. But again, I don't think it matters as much as we like to think it does. And and still when they do click to start the broadcast, if it's 20 minutes past the hour when it starts, it's going to be at that point in the presentation. So at that point, at least does feel live.
I think too, it like kind of depends on how you market it. I mean, if you're going out there and saying like, come to my live webinar and making it really excessive that it's live and then it's not, maybe people will be turned off. But if you're just saying, you know, watch this webinar, you're not telling people it's live and expecting them to be live, expecting it to be live. I wouldn't like blatantly lie about it and say, put the word live everywhere. Like Doug said, I think if they're getting the information and there's an ability to get their questions answered, it's not as big of a deal, but you definitely have to follow up with those questions coming in order to, forge those relationships.
Yeah. So Walter's saying if it doesn't feel like an event, it is no different than a YouTube video. And that's true, except for the fact that this automated webinar service is constantly enabling you to, go out and proactively get people to watch it. And you've got automated follow-up if you set that up afterwards. And the automated, service is talking to your email service provider or CRM and automatically filling in all those details and letting you know, oh, the person watched for half of the webinar, then they left. Right. Or the person watch the whole thing, so you definitely want to be emailing this person because they're interested, right? You do get analytics like that on a YouTube video, but it's not as transparent. It doesn't automatically do things for you in your email service provider that's making this. Because remember, Garabedian, I'm going to say his last name because I can pronounce that better. He would wake up every morning, he said, to 4 new appointments thanks to his automated webinars that the Ever webinar was, talking to his CRM and queuing them up, so to speak, for him each day. So it is nothing more than a video. It is nothing more than a video in actuality, but still it can do a lot for you. Andy, one drawback, people will think that I wear the same clothes every day. Okay, well, Andy, first of all, I hate to break it to you, but people aren't going to be coming back and watching your same. Some people will. Your true fans, Andy, they will. But I think most people are not going to be doing that. So I think they won't care what you're wearing each day.
Yeah, if you do 2 automated webinars on different topics, just make sure you change up the wardrobe.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone's got a Zoom shirt anyway, right? These days.
Yeah. So just real quick before we move on, Scott's asking, is this... Oh, yes, I got it working. Do I have it working? Let me see. There we go. Okay, I got to do it manually here. So Scott's asking, is this format with the two of you side by side, nice green background with logo, a function of Facebook Live? No, this is not. So Facebook Live, of course, Facebook lets you go live within the Facebook page or the Facebook app, but it's going to be just your webcam feed, right? And they also have other features like polling and like emojis or something you can put on screen too. But I am using a software called vMix to bring us both in, to mix us with the overlay and the logo, and to bring in these comments and to go live to Facebook. So that's what's happening there. Okay, let's move on then to, I think we're good with automated webinars. Let's move on. Yeah.
I feel like we really sold them, and now everyone's going to be kind of shocked by how we what we say about live webinars.
It's funny because I didn't expect to be that into automated webinars, but I was feeling it when I was talking about them. So I guess they have won my heart. I don't know. But if we didn't mention it, your time is probably the biggest factor. I think for our financial advisor, it's your time that you are not having to spend giving your webinar live each time. But okay, let's talk about live, because live is powerful as well and should not be discounted. And I think that, a lot of people don't want to do live because they might be afraid of the fact that it's live. And if they say something, they make some kind of error, live, it's live, right? That happened. You can't take it back. But when we're talking about the advantage of live, I'm going to get a little woohoo here, but it's real. There is a connection that happens and an energy that happens when you're giving something live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we've talked before in our last webinar themed show where we talked about webinar engagement tips. We talked about the fact that you need to amp up the energy a little bit when you're talking into a video camera or a webcam, because if you don't, you're just going to look a little flat. Well, when you're going live and you're doing your presentation live, that's kind of fueling that fire. You're kind of amped up. I mean, Devin, you've done a lot of webinars live. Isn't that true? Don't you feel that?
It's absolutely true. I actually I was at the Facebook Marketing Summit, which I know I've talked about here. They're talking about Facebook Live in particular, which is different than, a live webinar. But the presenter was saying, a lot of people feel really anxious about going live. And his advice was kind of turn that anxiety into positive adrenaline and really ramp up your energy. And that's absolutely true. I'll just give a little spoiler. I pre-recorded a webinar yesterday, not because we're, going to make it an automated thing, but I'm going to be on vacation next week and I was just pre-recording it. So
she's going to be on the beach drinking a Mai Tai. Like, oh yeah.
I definitely felt, and I had done a live webinar the day before, and during the live webinar, I couldn't see anyone who was on it. I had no idea how many participants were there, but instinctually, my adrenaline and my energy was much higher than it was when I was pre-recording it. And I felt when I was pre-recording it, I really had to channel that and think about and pretend that it was live, because subconsciously I didn't have that same energy. So I think that's absolutely true that when you're doing something live, whether or not people are watching, something in you kind of instinctually brings that energy.
It's like a high. It's like a presenter's high, and like afterwards you even come down a little bit, like oh man.
Yeah.
I think you in like biographies about like musicians and stuff, they'll often talk about coming down from like the high of like performing. I'm not saying it's at that level, like rocking out a sold out stadium. Yeah. But it definitely is a thing. It's definitely a phenomenon that happens. And I think the other thing with doing it live too is the engagement, right? Mm-hmm. So look at me. I can go and I can say, Scott is saying right now, and we can talk about, Scott hit the question that he asked live. So in Scott's brain, that's like, oh wow, they're talking to me on the stream, answering my question. I'm being heard.
Right.
Right. And this is live. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's a powerful thing, not to discount at all.
Yeah.
So I think that live webinars or live presentations of any kind excel when you are dealing with a warmer audience. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about your clients, when we're talking about, people who may have been heard you on a podcast, or they're familiar with you in your articles that you've written, your newsletters, whatever, people who are used to, you and, reading or consuming your thoughts and opinions, they're kind of on your side a little bit. Then when you go and do a live webinar for that kind of crowd, they're much more likely to be engaged with you. You're going to have a much more natural back and forth, and they're going to start out warm, but by the end of it, they're going to be hot, right? They're going to be, mm-hmm. they're going to be that much more connected to you at the end of a live webinar. Whereas if you're doing a live webinar in front of cold traffic, hopefully you got some people on, right? Because I think most of us have done a webinar or some presentation or stream live where there's like a handful of people on, and you're like, okay, nobody's talking. And I'm like, yeah, come on, guys, let me know.
Yeah, it can be rough.
Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. Still waiting. Come on, let me know. Okay, I guess we'll move on. You know what I mean? So you can fall a little bit flat, but the energy is still there, I think. But anyway, mm-hmm. I do think live presentations on the web are very well suited for people
if I can just expand on that quickly, because that's a really good point. And when I'm talking to marketing clients about building their marketing funnel out, I have found that I have separated webinars into on demand and live because, like you said, I think that an on demand webinar can kind of be at the top of your funnel as like this awareness thing because it's not as big of an ask to have someone show up at a particular time. Where I think if you do have a live webinar and it's scheduled, that's kind of the next part of the funnel of people who know who you are already, because you're asking for a time slot on their calendar that might be 2 weeks away. That's actually a pretty big ask to have someone sign up and commit to coming to that, where they have to have some sort of connection with you to really want to do that, or they have to be super interested in the topic. So I do agree with you where the automated webinar can be for a colder audience, where the live you might want to save for a warmer audience that kind of knows about you already.
Yeah. Okay. So let's jump right into this then, which is, when do you want to use which solution? So as Devin just said, if you are going after, cold traffic, you've got a funnel set up, and you want to make your webinar a piece of that funnel, automated really excels there, right? That can be a key piece there. Now, when to do live? So as I already mentioned, I think the warm audience, your clients, people who know you, are familiar with you, that's who you want to go live in front of. But I also think you want to consider going live when you're first starting to do the webinar, when you're first learning how it's going to go, when you want to feel out, what falls flat, what part did you really, nail, and got a reaction from the chat. If you just go straight and record it, standalone, and then use that as your pre-recorded, as your automated webinar, you're not learning anything from that experience. And once you put it in place, you're definitely not going to want to go back once everything's already in place and change, the recording. It's going to just keep, it's going to stay in place for a long time. And the little things that you could have fixed or the improvements you could have made are not going to happen because it's automated now and it's out of your mind space. Whereas if you do it live at the beginning, you're going to learn about how you present a webinar and about how the audience, reacts to what you say. And you can then, play up the things that worked in the next time, or, rework the things that didn't work.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great strategy to do your webinars live 2-3 times. And then once you've really honed in, the process, use one of those recordings as your automated webinar, or do a fresh recording, knowing what you now know about how you deliver a webinar and how people react to it.
Yeah, and in doing that, you can test out like different stories or even different jokes. I mean, like try to figure out what the audience responds to and what resonates with them. I definitely think I've done the same webinar over and over again before, and you do 100% learn from giving it, and you figure out what points really resonate with people, and you can play those up. So I completely agree that if you are starting out, do it live a few times, get that feedback, get your confidence up, and then use a recording later on that puts all of that together. I think that's a great point.
Okay, and then so let's see. So yeah, automated webinars when it's in front of cold traffic, part of your funnel. Live when it's in front of your audience and you are just learning the ropes. I think that, and just remember, guys, that it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right.
You can constantly use both at the same time, and that's kind of the way to do it on a case-by-case basis. If you've got a new, something you're promoting, then do a live webinar the first couple of times, and then turn it into automated, get it going. If you're doing a live launch, so to speak, yeah.
And if you're doing something like super timely, like back when the pandemic started, I know a lot of advisors were giving like kind of market update webinars. I would always do those live because it's timely. People are going to have questions, and you're trying to make that connection in real time because this is something that's happening right now. Whereas if you're doing maybe something like a more of an evergreen topic, those can be automated. But anything super timely or new, I would always recommend doing live at least first, because it's going to be timely at that moment, and you want to be able to have that interaction live.
That's a great point, and that is kind of a downside of the automated, where you do have to be mindful of, is everything I'm saying going to be relevant at the time somebody watches this? You know, because if you do mention a current event, and when they're, they're, Tom Brady just scored that awesome touchdown for the Patriots. Come again? What's going on here? Right. So you do got to be mindful about that when you're doing automated, for sure. And so maybe, now you got to be watching your recording and vetting it and making sure, that's a little bit more extra time spending. But so Peter is writing, Doug and Devin. So as you know, I teach a lot of seminars at a local community college, and these are done using Zoom. I'm thinking about recording the webinars and offering these as a pre-recorded video. I believe having the participation will be a plus. After watching your green screen presentation, I plan to upgrade my equipment and giving this a shot. Your thoughts? Okay, this is interesting. So actually, I think, Peter, that if people are paying for a training, I think you really got to do it live in that situation. I think that behooves you to do it live, because I think they want that. They want that. And that's part of the reason why they're taking they want that interaction with you. That's a key part of like a training that somebody's signing up for. That's my gut reaction to what you're saying. But definitely upgrade your setup.
Yeah.
Upgrade your setup and do it live.
You could make like shorter promo videos for the seminar, where it's kind of like a sneak peek to get people interested in it, as like a marketing standpoint. But I do agree with Doug. If people are like paying for it, it's a little bit different than a free webinar, because they have skin in the game, right? They've made that investment in it. They're going to show up. They're going to be interactive. Whereas a free live webinar, a lot of people will sign up, and then if anyone here has done it, you can share too with us. We hear this all the time that, maybe 50 people signed up, but like 20 people actually attended the webinar. So you're losing people because it's free and there's nothing at risk. If they're paying, most likely, I'm assuming that they're going to show up and take advantage of that live interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to talk about warm. It doesn't get warmer than when somebody's plunked down cash to hear you. So I think live's the way to go for you. But keep in mind, though, that you can pre-record, segments of what you're talking about, especially if you want to demonstrate something, you can pre-record segments of it and then be upfront about it and be like, hey, here's this video I recorded to show you guys this. Play that video in Zoom and then back to you live, if that makes sense. Yeah,
that's a good point.
You can do that, and you could do many videos like that, but you're always coming back to yourself being live, and it's totally transparent, and you're there interacting. So I hope that answers your question. So let's just kind of talk about the platforms, because we didn't really get into that too much. Okay. Wait, Peter's got a clarification. So he says, I wasn't clear. It is live for the community college attendees. I'm planning to then post it afterward for free to other people who visit my website. Oh, okay. Yeah, that changes things, Peter. Yeah. You definitely can do that, and that's great. So it's live for your attendees, and then you're posting it on your website. The one thing I would consider, Peter, with this approach is you might not necessarily want to just take the recording of your presentation and like put that entire like uncut live thing on your website. Consider like a highlight reel. Where you're like, maybe you really got into a point and you're like, you got a great reaction or whatever. That's one of your highlights, and so you've got a few of those, and maybe you have just some like pumped up music where it's like, Peter Murphy, man, I
would not put the whole thing on, because then why would people sign up for the class later? Or people who did sign up might feel like, why did I pay for this? But I think Doug's right. If you can do little segments and give people a taste of it.
Yeah. Or
that could be powerful.
Or you chunk it up where, the first point you made, that's a video.
Yeah.
The second point you made, that's a video. When you're talking about video online, unless it's like a live thing or like an extended training thing, people are going to see like an hour long runtime and be like, see ya. So you want to chop it up as much as possible. You can repurpose that video in so many different ways. You can share it to your social media following. You can put it in your site. There's so many different ways you can reuse it. You can take the audio from it and put it out as a podcast.
Yeah.
There's just so many ways you can repurpose that, Peter. So that's a great idea. I think you're thinking really smartly about that. So, okay. So automated webinar solutions. EverWebinar is the big one. They're the oldest one in the space. I'm actually learning EverWebinar right now, and it's definitely a platform that was designed by marketers. It is. It actually is. And I recommend EverWebinar because they have got by far the best affiliate commission. No, I'm just kidding. Go to this link and sign up now. No, I'm just kidding. No.
We don't get anything for recommending these brands.
That was a joke. But it definitely was designed by marketers in the sense that it plays very well with your email service providers and with Facebook ads and using the Facebook Pixel. It definitely can help you get smarter about how you're, doing your webinars and how you're following up with people after your webinars. There's a lot of stuff there. Also, it's got things like you can throw up an offer at the end, a nice little, sign up now. There's you can put like a countdown timer where, you've got 10 minutes before the webinar is over to sign up for a one-on-one consultation with me. And if you do, I'm going to send you my guide to retiring on a yacht in the Bahamas or whatever. You know what I mean? Whatever you got for your resource point to drive the call to action you're trying to make. So that's why I would recommend EverWebinar, because it's very marketer savvy. And then the other one I know about is EasyWebinar, which has some of the functionality of EverWebinar, but I'm just less familiar with it, although it does look a little slicker in its presentation. But both of these platforms, and there's so many. There's like Webinar Ninja, Stealth Seminars, one of them. There's like so many, and as I'm talking about them, there's like 3 that are probably coming out as I'm talking right now. They're coming out like every day because it's like a gold rush right now to get these things out. But Devin, do you have any like hot takes as to automated webinar solutions that you've heard good things about?
Those are definitely the top 2 that I have also heard about, and I would recommend using a service and not trying to like do it yourself, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with tech. I was working with an advisor and they were trying to figure out how to do it through Zoom, play a recording, which you can do, but it's much more time intensive and doesn't really have that slick feel, and you need to be there and pressing play on it. So there's no point in really doing it automated at that point. So I guess the only thing I would say is I would recommend investing in a program that will help you automate this, because like Doug said, it's not just the webinar they're automating, they're also connected to your CRM and your marketing system. And that's a lot to set up on your own. And it's definitely worth the investment to make it look and work well. You don't want to be advertising something where someone clicks to sign up for the webinar and it doesn't play, or, something like that. So definitely use a program, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with live streaming and webinars and all of that.
Yeah, technically you can record, a video of yourself doing your presentation, play that video file in Zoom, and then start your broadcast for the webinar. And when people join in, it'll look live, but you greatly increase your risk that, something's going to happen to your window that's playing the video, and they see, the pause and the rewind buttons and stuff like that. And as Devin mentioned, first of all, you got to like be on there, or somebody's got to be on there to do that. And you're missing out on a lot of power that these automated webinar solutions give you. So why not just use the solutions that are there to do this? Yeah, that's a great point. So, okay, wow, it's been 40 minutes. We can talk.
Time flies when you're talking about webinars.
Time flies when you're talking about webinars. Okay, well, that is it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion. Remember, well, Devin's on vacation next week, but I will be here Thursday at 2. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about, but I'll come up with something for you guys to give you guys some value. But I hope you've enjoyed today's live stream. Thank you so much for attending. And until next time, have a great week, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.